We are back for the finals between Gloomhaven and Pandemic Legacy. That is going to be the
Oh, who
fun.
didn't see this coming?
Yeah, exactly. The first and second seed, and I think it's the first and second highest rated game on Board Game Geek. I might be wrong.
Somewhere around there, yeah.
Yeah, Pandemic Legacy I know held first. It might have dropped, but I know Gloomhaven is currently first.
Yes.
So Pandemic Legacy is definitely within the top five for sure, which is a
hmm
lot for 100,000 plus games. So I am guessing I'm going to take Pandemic, and you are going to take you're going to take Gloomhaven. And yes,
Gloomhaven,
we
yep.
agree. Mechs vs Minions is really fun as
Yeah, I
well.
really enjoyed it.
Um, and I only played through the first couple scenarios, so I think
hmm
if I played it more, it might have gotten farther even too. Since I don't know how the story evolves from there. Yeah, it is super random, but oh, such a good puzzle. All right,
Oh yeah.
so do you want to get us started?
Yes, but before we go to the debate, this is what the topics that we're going to talk about.
Okay.
Both can score points. Whoever has the highest amount of points wins. Our tiebreaker, of course, because only one can win this, is People's Choice.
Yep. So what are the talking
Um,
points?
Theme. Which
Theme.
has the better overall theme? We have which has the better overall campaign, or the campaign. Sometimes there'll be a push. Mechanisms,
Okay.
the story aspect. I don't know if I said that already.
Nope.
And art and production.
Art and production. Okay. All right. Let's get started. Let's let's see here. Gloom, two solid games. I'm more interested in Gloomhaven, but wouldn't turn out a good. Yeah,
What it turned
Pandemic
out a
Legacy.
good
Yeah,
playthrough.
couldn't agree more. All right,
Yeah,
let's
I
get
agree exactly the
started
same
as
way.
far as the theme goes. Theme.
This is going to be a tough one because with Gloomhaven, you have your generic fantasy with its head turned. You know what I mean?
Yep.
You still have those same kind of characters that you would see in Dungeons and Dragons, but they're different creatures per se. You have your brute, you have your mind flayer, which are like your magicians and stuff like that.
Yep.
But then you have like what is that thing called? It's the little rat character, and this is one of the first packs, so I'm not spoiling. This was the one you can open.
Yep. Awesome.
Okay,
Yeah, I mean, well, theme for Pandemic Legacy. We know we're living it right
we're
now.
we're
It's terrible.
yeah we're
Uh,
living it at the moment.
Pandemic Legacy has it starts off with the four diseases, just like standard pandemic, and the overarching story, which we're gonna try to avoid spoilers as much as possible. It evolves.
Things change.
It does change, and things happen, and it gets crazy, and man, is that an enriching story. But let's talk about as far
We're
as
not a story yet. We're a theme.
that's true. So let's think about which one best embraces its theme. I think Pandemic, the fact that we are, like, it really does feel like we're trying to find cures and we're trying to discover what we need to do with these diseases. It fits the theme really well because you start in the CDC, you start traveling around the world trying to help treat patients. You're potentially locking down areas. Like all of this stuff, we're seeing it really right now. And as unfortunate as that is, I think that really is the bonus point for Pandemic as far as the theme goes.
Because we're actually seeing how it's working right now at the
Right. And
moment.
I think it's very thematic in that point where I think you're right on Gloomhaven. It's a fun theme, it's a cool story, but it's not game breaking. It's not a new interesting theme despite those changes.
I'll give you that the theme does come out more in Pandemic Legacy, because where Gloomhaven makes it the dungeon crawl style RPG,
Right.
Dungeons and Dragons type thing. It's going to be more so in the mechanisms that is the theme because it's a fantasy game. You have so many fantasy games. It's just that there's a twist on the fantasy.
Yeah.
So I'll give Pandemic Legacy the theme.
Yep. Okay, cool. So we agree the theme for Pandemic is going to Pandemic Legacy. Campaign. How how does the story evolve, and what impacts does our choices change the
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 aspects
game
of the game.
itself?
Yeah.
Um, I'll go ahead and start us
This
off.
Go
Uh,
ahead.
Yeah, the campaign itself, you have 2 shots at every month. Every month, welcome back, K3. Every month you have a chance to alter the future of the story, and those choices really are just about the most impactful choices in any game.
Hmm.
Whereas the campaign in Gloomhaven, it's more open, and it can
Much more
evolve
open.
in a very different way. So
Yeah, and then a lot of it too we haven't talked about in other debates with Gloomhaven
mhm,
is I3 touched on it where he doesn't like the event cards. They don't really do much, but they can change the flavor of the game because sometimes you go into a scenario with a bad thing or a good thing depending on what you chose.
sure,
And think of it along the lines of crossroad cards. If you played Dead of Winter,
yeah,
you have your good choice, you have your bad choice, whatever you choose, or they can both be bad, they can both be good. Just depends.
uh,
They
sorry,
change the flavor of the game. The only aspect of it is with Pandemic, you can lose twice and still be able to move forward. You have to beat a scenario in Gloomhaven to move forward. But
right,
where the choice comes in here is, am I going to A or am I going to B? Because if I go to B, A more than likely is closed off to me and I won't be able to go do that scenario. And I like that because it allows the table talk and stuff like that. But another thing about Gloomhaven during the campaign, when you're in a dungeon, not only do you have your personal quest that you want to do, so you might be trying to drive it to go do that because your character needs to get that done. You'll also get a scenario thing that you want to do to help you unlock new abilities and stuff like that.
sure,
So I may want to rush in and try to attack someone because I want to be the first person to make a kill,
gotcha. So
or I
yeah,
need to make sure I go take out this elite over here because I need to do that for I can get at my personal goal in this thing. So I like how it helps with the campaign. It gives you your feel of your character.
yeah, yeah, and then you'll notice on Twitch it jumped away for a moment. Sorry about that. I just wanted to make sure I was recording because this is pretty important. Uh, so yeah, I think we'll give the nod to as far as the campaign goes to Gloomhaven, just because I mean, Pandemic, it is more linear for that, and the
Yeah.
choices you make in Pandemic, it does affect the overall story, yes, but the story itself, you're still going to get a similar experience based on playing it versus in Gloomhaven, you really do have that sandboxy open field area.
Yeah.
All right, um,
Mechanisms.
mechanisms. Real quick, do you mind if we jump art and production up in front of that?
Sounds good to me.
Cool.
Yeah.
Pandemic has you know the pieces that come out later, they're decent. A lot of the stickers they were coming off on my board, but
Mm.
I mean that's just because the board was used. Unlike in Gloomhaven, you don't use the board.
Yeah, the
It's cool that
stickers
it's
just
there,
stick on the board.
but it's there for reference. It's
But
not
but
there
the
for
thing, what else is?
for
I
use.
haven't got to this point yet. But in Gloomhaven, there's stickers that go on cards too, depending on how you upgrade your character. So
Oh, I see. Uh,
so there that could be an issue on that. I just
sure.
haven't done it yet. But as you get further
Right.
along, there is stickers that will go on cards.
Yeah. And as far as art goes, I mean, Pandemic, it does have the standard art. And the art is good for what it is. And the way that the board is built is super thematic. It looks really good. Um, but if we're talking, I mean, art is obviously subjective, but production quality, there's a reason that
Why?
Gloomhaven is a twice the MSRP as Pandemic. Um,
Yeah.
and then those miniatures on those are really good. All of the components seem solid. The
Yeah, the
card
cardboard's really thick for the boards.
Yep, hundreds of cards. Yeah, I think we need to give that to Gloomhaven.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Cool. And there's just more art, whether you like it or not. I mean, it's substantially more. I think it's about the same as far as the flavor as
Yeah,
Pandemic Legacy. But I just wanted to bring that up because, yeah, I think that's more of an easy
and
choice for us.
and the thing is with Gloomhaven, it's such different art in production.
Yep.
Whereas Pandemic, if you play regular Pandemic, it's pretty much the same art,
Right. Exactly.
same production and everything. It's just bigger.
Yeah. It's just bigger. Yeah. All right. So mechanisms.
My
Mechan-
argument against Pandemic Legacy is the mechanisms don't change in an aspect. There's table talk. You're collecting cards. You're moving across the board. You're doing stuff. Certain things do happen in the game that kind of modify what you're doing, but it's pretty much the same kind of mechanisms throughout the game. That if you played regular Pandemic, it's Pandemic Legacy too.
right.
Gloomhaven, there's a lot more table talk. just because the way the cards work, you're doing a top one, you're doing a bottom one. So each time I play through, I can do the bottom one or the bottom part of a card differently. So I can do the top part of that one instead this next time I use it. So um, it's all card play, and it's how you got to talk with your teammates. Hey, I'm going to go take care of this guy. I
Right.
can hit him, but you can't exactly say, hey, and the cards drive everything. So
Yep.
it drives how fast you're going to go in the round, how you're going to attack, how you're going to move, if you're going to pick stuff up. And then if you, because it's a RPG style game, if you have that deck where it modifies it just like if you did a dice roll. If you roll a perfect 20, you're doing a perfect hit basically. Whereas in this one, you have the times two, so you're doing double damage. And so I think that's what I like about the way this mechanism works, because you're talking with your group, you're trying to decide which two cards you're going to use and which part of the cards you're going to use.
Sure.
And certain cards would be like, if I use this, that's it. I don't get it back for the game.
Yeah.
And it's a timer, because if you run out of cards, you're done.
Yeah. And I think the battle mechanism is really solid on that, but uh, you can play an optimal game, and I don't feel like sometimes you have a chance. Like, and that's depending on, like, for
That's the same
example.
thing with Pandemic Legacy. You can play an optimal game, and depending on what cards are in the deck, because the card. Remember, if you keep winning, cards
Right.
come out of the deck, making it smaller. So even if you try to mitigate it as much as you can, because of that smaller deck, you're not going to be able to win.
Well, it does the I think the mechanisms match the theme better in that. I mean, sure, like it table talk is okay. Yes, the mechanisms in Pandemic are a little more abstracted, but the fact of the epidemic cards, that's what does it. Is think about this. Think of exactly like how it's working right now that we're going through a pandemic. There this
They're
it
not collecting the same color cards to make things go away.
No, they're not. They're researching to try and find a cure. Yes. And you can only do that by taking samples, which is what you're doing in Pandemic. But the thing is, it the way that the viruses spread across the world and how it goes to the cities and reinfects the same cities and goes through with the epidemics, that is so
But see,
enriching.
see, but what
And
you're talking about there is you're not really talking about the mechanisms. Yeah, they can do that. That's more thematic than it is mechanism wise.
true, but I think those mechanisms are what make the game so good, is because you do always have a chance to fight that. Sure, the mechanisms in Gloomhaven, it's a really good battle system, but it's just a battle system. That's all it is. Whereas the rest of the game, the
But
part of unlocking the characters and getting items and following the storyline, there's no mechanisms there. You're just moving along, you're picking a choice, and then you do another battle. That's all
yeah,
it is.
but the battle system is the main part of the game. It's a
Right.
dungeon crawl at heart, and the battle mechanism is what drives the game. And those battle mechanisms are what make the game.
Yeah, but then in Pandemic, every mechanism that's in there evolves the game, and it's true to the theme. It's not just a battle. You could explore this
I
area. You
I'm sorry.
could.
It's basically set collection. You're getting one color, trying to research it, and then this way you can go to the city and cure it. It's a set collection game where in this one you're actually battling.
Yeah, yeah, it's just a battle though. That's it. But like if I get scarred, my character gets permanently damaged in there because of the disease. If I go to a city and try and block it off because it's getting too rampant, I can do that. If I need to destroy a city card and make it non-exist anymore because it's gotten too out of hand, I can do that in the game. That is so much more the
Mm,
mechanisms in that hold true so much more solid than in Gloomhaven.
Well,
Easily.
like I said, there's things in Gloomhaven that we haven't even seen yet. Like I said, you can change cards and make them more powerful. You can change cards where all they did was attack, but now they can wound, or you can make them pierce. You can change the mechanism of how that card works. Um, Certain things happen in the game where you get achievements that can change the game itself. Because I don't want to go too much spoilers, but there are achievements that will unlock scenarios for you, or you can't even do a scenario until you meet these achievements.
Sure.
So there's things that drive the game that I can't go in too much discussion about
Okay.
because of spoilers.
All right. Then let's call it a tie.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, because that's that's the mechanisms are both really solid. I personally do think Pandemic's mechanisms are better, but let's talk
Again,
storyline.
this is also going where you've only played one gameplay. You haven't seen the things that can
That's
be
true.
changed.
That's true. That's true. But we've both seen Pandemic Legacy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
And
all right.
from what I've seen with Gloomhaven, I know the mechanisms do change.
Okay. All right. Let's see here. I think it's pretty clear that Gloomhaven is just a combat game. I don't think it's necessarily an issue, except that the game markets itself as more than that. That's a valid argument.
Yeah, it is.
That's a very valid argument. Yeah, it does claim to be this like massive, or it's basically Skyrim in a box, but really it's just a series of battles. I don't get a sense of exploration in that.
Yeah, and he might fix that, like I said, with the new game that's coming out, Frosthaven. I know there's some stuff that does change, which I'll be interesting to see if Frosthaven really will take over Gloomhaven with the
True,
mechanisms
but
that he's changing.
if we're talking sequels, Pandemic Legacy season 2 is all about exploration and discovery.
Yeah, haven't played it yet, so can't talk about it.
I know, but and you haven't played Gloom or Frosthaven either, so we
But
can
yeah,
see.
that Kickstarter is going nuts.
Oh, I bet.
6 million
Oh,
last time I checked.
oh my goodness. Okay. So then let's go to storyline. Um,
This is gonna be interesting.
this is gonna be very
Honestly,
tricky without doing spoilers.
yeah.
Um, okay. And I would like to hear what Quantum and Ithri say about this as far as storyline goes. I think Pandemic Legacy has just the better story. The way it evolves.
Okay, here's my thing with that.
Okay.
You've only played one scenario, Gloomhaven, so you
Correct.
can't say which one has the better story. I've actually played enough of Gloomhaven and Pandemic Legacy story wise to say that I actually think this is. Uh,
But ultimately, who cares? They made billions of dollars, so good on them. I love that.
yeah, but the storyline wise itself, I think it's a push. Both are really good stories.
Yeah.
Without going into spoilers, this is just my thought because I've played all the way through Pandemic and I've played not most of the way. I've played a few scenarios more than you have,
Right.
about 9 more. In the story, the way it's driving, we go like, "Oh, what's next? Oh, what's going to happen now? What are we going to do now?" So that, and to me, that's a good story. It's you're trying to find out what that cliffhanger is. If we make this choice, what's going to happen to the story?
Right. That's fair. Where, I mean, but that's the same in Pandemic, though.
Yeah, no,
Like,
no, that's what I'm saying. That's why I
yeah.
think both of these, it's basically a tie when it comes down to stories, because both of these tell really good stories, and your choices are what's driving said story. So you're like, man, if we go here, what's going to happen here?
But I also think that's true, and I think that I like Pandemic seems more of like a cinematic story, which is a phenomenal storyline. It really does have a phenomenal storyline going in it. Where it seems to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, that Gloomhaven seems more of like when you've played all those scenarios, you're like, man, like I created this story for my character. Is that? Do
Yes.
you agree with that?
That's how I feel about it. And like again, not going into spoilers, but we did a personal quest for our friend Jim, and he got to unlock a new character. And the way that personal story built up on that storyline, for him to unlock that character, you're just sitting there like, "Holy crap!"
Right. I mean, like, well, I mean that the mechanisms lead into to creating the story. But Ithri brought up a good point earlier that I want to make sure that it's recorded on there. He said if you create a good story, or if you have a good story, tell us the story. So if you put it on the players to make the story, like say Dungeons and Dragons, for example, if you're making your story, sure that's good, but you can't claim that the game made the good story. It's the game players. And I feel like that's where
I,
Pandemic has, as far as just the story itself, regardless of whether it compares to the mechanisms or not, I think that story in
yeah,
Pandemic is what sets
I
it
get,
apart.
I get that point, and I'm not going to argue it against it, but we're at a point now where more people want to be involved with the story. That's why video games are so big, because the choices, yeah, they're telling a good story, but some choices, like especially when you're talking about a Skyrim or something like that,
Right.
you're making choices that are changing the aspect of the game. That's why the choose your own adventure game that I mentioned earlier, you're choosing how certain things happen. And to me, Gloomhaven is such a thing
Yeah.
where it's like that choose your own adventure. How are you going to tell the story that's here?
Yeah.
And I think
So,
to me, it gives me a personal connection to that story rather being that story told to me.
but that doesn't mean it has a better story, though. That means that you created a better story.
But to me creating that story is a better story. I don't need to be told that story. I want to make that story.
But I don't disagree, but that doesn't mean that it's a better story. Like, so
But
take
you're
me, for
saying, but
example.
your argument is that because they're telling us a story, it's a better story.
No, yeah, because
But
it has
no,
a better story.
it's not the better story. It's what you feel is the better story, and me telling the story for myself makes it a better story.
But I'm not a writer.
That's why you get a lot of people who go out there and fish and say they caught a fish this big, but they really say they caught a fish this big because they want to tell a better personal story.
All right, if we brought up another point, it doesn't help that Gloomhaven is generic fantasy. I think a lot of Think viruses are more fun than Sword and a Board. Well, maybe not nowadays. Yeah.
Well, see, to me, I like generic fantasy more than I like viruses. So that's why it's more of a personal choice for me when it comes to Gloomhaven.
Yeah, but what we're judging right now, this one category is which has the better story. And
Yeah, but see,
And
we're going in
Pandemic
circles
does
here
have
because you're
the better
saying
story.
the story that's already written, and this is the same reason why we got rid of Mice and Mystics when it went against Gloomhaven when it came down to the story, because it's linear. The story is being told to you,
Yes.
whereas we're telling the story, and
which is why Gloomhaven got
it's the same argument.
Well, which is
Yeah,
why Gloomhaven
and
got
that's
the point
why-
for campaign, because you can change it and you create your own story. But the story itself in Pandemic is a better story.
I'm sorry, I'm not budging on this one. I think telling your own story is the better story because I can go and relate that story once you play through Gloomhaven and be like, "Oh, I did this. This is what I told," and you could tell a completely different story, and that makes it better because it makes it more of a feeling of something that you can grasp and control yourself.
It makes it better if you're a good storyteller. I am not.
I'm sorry, I'm not budging. I'd rather make my own story. Pandemic, it's going to be a push before anything because I want to tell that story. I want to be the one to tell that story.
All right, tell me your story of Gloomhaven.
I can't without going into spoilers.
Oh, what did your character do? And what's his background?
Well, which one? Because I've already retired a character. I've played through two characters and I got two different backgrounds.
Okay, the first one.
I had Craig the Cragheart.
Okay.
And his personal story was he was trying to avenge somebody and was able to succeed with that. And then it's funny when characters retire, they get added into the event decks and they can cost people money.
Okay, well that's mechanism. What about the rest of his story? So he avenged somebody and he avenged somebody.
I cannot tell the story
Fair point, not Danny.
with people who haven't played the game yet, and nor can you with Pandemic.
I like that. Fair point, not Danny. Well done. All right. So if we give it let's give it a tie then.
Yeah, I was gonna say that.
Which means that just barely, as far as campaign games go, Gloomhaven has irked out the win with 3 points.
You're forgetting
versus...
People Choice. I know we said it was tiebreaker, but People's Choice is Pandemic Legacy, so it's a tie.
Ah, okay. Yep. So it is a tie. So they are both equally the better one. I think it all depends down to
what your flavor is, really. Like,
right.
Ithri doesn't like Gloomhaven because generic fantasy, and he prefers viruses that make you think. Understandable.
Let's say it's sci-fi, right?
Pandemic
is really more
we'll talk sci-fi. Well, it's not really sci-fi when it's real, Danny.
Well, it wasn't when they made it. Thank God.
But to this one, honestly, I'm happy with the push because these are some of my favorite games. Gloomhaven, of course, is my favorite game. I love the mechanisms. I love the combat. I've always wanted to get into Dungeons and Dragons without having to create everything.
Yeah.
And this one tells me that story. in. No dice. That makes me so much happy. And like I was telling people, yeah, you got that card that gives you a little bit of luck,
Hmm.
but as you progress your character, they can mitigate that by adding cards and taking cards out, making your deck a little bit better. So
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, so I mean, yeah, we're gonna say that it's a tie then on this.
I'm
Um,
okay with that because they're both glorious and great
yeah.
games, honestly.
So if you watch this video, it probably went over the 15 minutes. I'm almost certain that it did. So we're probably not
Because
gonna
we were
get.
having a little too much fun with that argument.
We had a heck of an argument. So we probably won't be able to upload this to YouTube. So or at least not for the time being. Hopefully soon, if we can, then you'll see our arguments. And once again, if you like either one of them, then they're both really good. So
Yeah.
either one you choose, that'll be a wash. That'll be a tie because
And
you and
then
I both agree
if
that.
if I can find editing software, then I'll probably be able to split it into two.
Okay, cool. Then that's what it'll be. The real winner is Cephalofair Games. Yes.
Yes. Have you not seen their Kickstarter at 3 right now? That last time I checked, they were at 6 million for the next game. It's ridiculous. And both Kickstarters at Gloomhaven made over $1 million.
Yeah,
So
but also, which makes me excited for the Return to Dark Tower because not only is it
yeah, I just saw
designed,
that.
it's remade from Restoration Games, which means Rob Daviau really
and
did a
Isaac
great job
Childress.
developing it, and Isaac Childress wrote some of the storyline behind it. Oh my goodness, I'm excited for that. So
Yeah. So
yeah, the real
I can't
winner is
wait.
Cephalofair Games. Cool.
So
So we're gonna cut this off for this. This has been an everyday board games podcast featuring Daniel and
Daniel.
and thank you all for tuning in. Feel free to comment below, and if you are in Twitch, feel free to comment as well with us. We're gonna pick the theme for next week, and we will post that online shortly. So thanks again, and thanks for tuning in.